Will President Biden's comprehensive immigration and reform plan resolve the decades-long immigration crisis? Join Richard Ebeling and me in this week's Libertarian Angle as we examine that question. Hi, I'm Jacob Hornberger, president of the Future of Freedom Foundation. This is this week's Libertarian Angle, the show that brings you the principled and uncompromising case for the libertarian philosophy, especially in the context of the burning issues of the day. I'm joined by my co-host, Richard Ebeling, professor of economics at the Citadel. Richard, good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, and good to have you all tuning in again. Okay, Richard, so President Biden has done, of course, the predictable. He's proposing this big, comprehensive immigration reform plan. I mean, I love that term. I mean, that's what the mainstream media has been saying, for, I think, all my life. We need comprehensive immigration reform. And every time they enact one of these comprehensive immigration reforms, everything settles down for a while. But then before too long, the crisis environment starts coming back to the forefront. People get all upset about the illegal aliens are invading the United States, and then the inevitable crackdown. Look at Biden. He was vice president under the Obama administration. And that was when Obama was known as the deporter-in-chief. And the reason he was known as the deporter-in-chief was because he was setting records as to the number of people he deported. So it's kind of funny because you see Republicans saying, oh, the Democrats favor open borders. Well, you sure have a hard time convincing Obama of that because he was setting records on deportations. Well, in this latest comprehensive reform plan, they're talking about a quick path for citizenship for, I don't know, the 10 million or so illegal immigrants that are here. The DACA children that were brought to the United States as youngsters, they're looking for a path for citizenship for them, or at least permanent status. And then they're changing the quotas on certain countries. I mean, this is all just immigration idiocy, Richard. I've seen this all my life, this immigration crisis. And what these people just don't realize, along with their supporters in the mainstream press, is that there is no reform plan that can work. Now, as soon as one is enacted, I can guarantee you there's going to be critics that say, well, wait. You didn't adopt my reform plan. If you'd adopted my reform plan, everything would be fine. No, there is no reform plan that will ever work to fix this immigration crisis. And that's the message we've been given for 30 years here. Give it up. You're better off if you just go out and play golf than to spend your time coming up with these reform plans. And the same thing, of course, applies with healthcare. Medicare reform and pandemic reform and this kind of nonsense. When you've got an inherently defective system, no reform is going to work. It's impossible because inherently defective means inherently defective. It cannot be fixed. Now, we often hear that the immigration system's broken. It's not broken. It's inherently defective. It cannot be fixed. Something broken can be put back together sometimes, but not when it's inherently defective. You've got an inherently defective system here. Now, why is that? Well, it's a socialist system. And everybody knows or should know by now that socialism is an inherently defective paradigm. It's based on the concept of central planning, that when you come up with this comprehensive reform plan, it's run centrally planned by the government. And so when you have a centrally planned system, no matter how many times you reform it, you're going to continue to have crises. And sometimes the reforms make the crises even worse. So what is the solution? We've been saying it for 30 years. We published a book, probably about more than 25 years ago, The Case for Free Trade and Open Immigration. Open borders. There's nothing else going to work. And let me repeat that. Nothing else is going to work except freedom and free markets and economic liberty. That means the free movements of people across borders. The same way we have here domestically. We have open borders between the states, free trade and open immigration. Nothing else, underline nothing else, can work to resolve the decades-long immigration crisis. So It's also a system, open borders, that's consistent with moral principles. Look at the death and suffering that comes with these people's system. That death and suffering isn't going to go away. And you have the perverse results. They're going to legalize everybody here and put them on a path to citizenship. All that's going to do is encourage more people to come over to get into the next wave. I mean, this goes on every time they do this. And so their crisis continues. And then finally, there's the police state aspect of this whole thing, where you've got an immigration police state. Okay, Biden may make a big show of, limiting the Berlin Wall that Trump started, but big deal. He's still going to have the enforcement mechanisms, the roving border patrol checkpoints, the domestic checkpoints, where they stop cars that have never even gone into Mexico, the intrusive searches at the border, where they take your cell phone and demand your passwords now. I mean, it's incredible. Not to mention full body cavity searches there. And you've got trespasses onto farms and ranches without warrants. All of that apparatus will remain in place because you have to have enforcement if you're going to have this kind of system. So you've got this perverse system, Richard. You've got this hope springs eternal mindset among these people that, President Biden's finally going to resolve the immigration crisis. It's a pipe dream. And of course, you have their immoral system that brings death and suffering in a police state. The only solution out of this thing, freedom and free markets, and that means open borders. What do you think, Richard?
Well, we have to ask ourselves, what is the motive, the rationale, the reason why people constantly are searching for this? And that's because they suffer from a variety of both social and political and economic fallacies that have prevailed for a very long time in U.S. history. Let's deal with a few of them, if I may. First, there's concern that, they come from different places and they speak different languages with different cultures and sometimes different religions. How can America remain cohesive? How could they ever become real Americans? Well, the fact this is the same thing that's been happening for entire history of the United States. We are. It is not a cliche. It's not a fantasy. We are a country of immigrants. The fact is that the vast majority of those who are Americans today are here because some parent or grandparent or great-grandparent or great-great-grandparent came here to make a new life for themselves. Yes, there is a percentage, unfortunately, a tragic percentage of the U.S. population who are the descendants who were brought here not of their voluntary choice, slaves that were brought from Africa. But the fact is that however tragic that is, and was an abomination by any human standard of ethics and morals, the fact is the vast majority of the other people who are in this country did not come here in chains. They came here because they were escaping from political persecution, religious oppression, and lack of economic opportunity in their home countries because of favors, privileges, and restrictions that their own governments were imposing upon their economic societies. So they came here. And all of these criticisms have been heard before. The Irish get here. They come here in the 1830s and 1840s and 1850s, often escaping from the potato famine and other economic crises in their home country. Oh, they're Irish. You know something? They're Pope worshippers. How can a Pope worshiper be a real? They obey the Pope in Rome. They're not real Americans. Oh gosh, and they're all drunks. My God, what a bad influence on the little kids of America. They're all drunks. Okay, and they beat their wives. Oh my gosh. Okay, so then who comes? Then you have the Germans, and the Germans come in the 1860s and 1870s. By the way, they were coming for economic opportunities, but they're also escaping from the military draft because Bismarck is fighting these wars to unify the German states under Prussian leadership. And so who are they? Oh my God, German draft dodgers. Oh my God. They don't want to serve their country in the military. Anyway, so now these Germans, these Germans, they're terrible. Yeah, they have this reputation for being hardworking and punctual, but they cluster together. They don't want to learn English. They speak German. And and they like to go out on Sunday to the local park and listen to this irritating, pom music while drinking themselves silly with these steins of beer. These Germans, they won't integrate. They'll never be real Americans. Okay, and then the Italians come and the Poles come, and we all know, more Catholics. Oh my God, it's what's happening to the real America, Protestant America. And then, oh no, there's another wave of them. Late 19th, early 20th century, Russian and Eastern European Jews. Oh no, now the Jesus killers are coming. They kidnapped Christian children and drained them of blood to make their matzah bread. Oh no, not that. Oh, it's the end of America. Oh, the Jews are coming. Oh my God. Well, it's unending, right? And you know what?
Don't forget the Chinese. And
yes. Oh, well, you see, that's the start of this. Because virtually until the First World War, there were no immigration restrictions or barriers. Indeed, practically no passport or visa requirements on anyone coming from Europe. But now the Chinese, followed by Japanese, but the Chinese start coming to America in the 1860s and 1870s. They've been brought over, cheap labor, to help build the transcontinental railroads out west and to mine in the gold mines. Oh, these Chinese! Oh, they're terrible. Oh God! First of all, they look different. Oh no! And they speak this unintelligible gibberish language, and they don't even eat with a fork and a knife. They're so primitive. They just hold these two sticks in their hands. And then even worse. Oh, again, the little kiddies are going to have a bad influence. They hang out in their spare time in opium dens, and they're not Christians. Even though they're all high on dope, they work on Sundays. They don't go to church. Now, I'm, of course, satirizing it. The fact is the Chinese were very badly treated. But this ended up in the first immigration restrictions in the 1870s, 1880s, followed by against the Japanese. But it's all this. But the fact is, we are the melting pot. Does anybody ever think, oh my gosh, I'm the cause of America's failures? My great-great-grandfather was Irish or German or Italian or Polish or British or Norwegian or Swedish or Romanian. No. And to be honest, well, there was severe prejudice for a very long time, well into and beyond the Second World War, against the Chinese, and particularly because of the Second World War, the Japanese. Who even thinks in these terms anymore? Who even thinks, oh my God, someone of Chinese descent has moved next door to me. Oh my God, he or she's dating my child. No. Nobody even thinks about this anymore, okay? This is gone. When I was young, by golly, Jacob, when I was a young whippersnapper, it was still common to say, well, who are you? Well, you don't say I'm Joe or George or Sally. I'm Irish American. I'm Italian American. I'm Puerto Rican American. I'm Polish American. Nobody even thinks in these terms anymore. We all, and what America is, good, and if you even think of some of it as bad, we are the mix of many cultures, many traditions, many customs, many peoples, many histories, and not just European, but others from other parts of the world. So that we are just one people today. And the fact is, even with all of the unfortunate history of slavery and segregation laws in the United States, the fact is, compared to 50 or 75 years ago, we are an integrated society in which increasingly only a small minority of weirdos and kooks are concerned about what you physically look like. Nobody even cares about these things, but that is what has made America great. We're not just one culture. We're not just one custom. We're not just one history. We're not just the background of one people. We're all of these. You see it in our restaurants. You see it in the clothes we wear. You hear it in the music we listen to. You see it in who we are. We are a blend of all of them. And to the extent that we are culturally and socially, if I can use that phrase, a great country, it's because we have brought the best of what all the world can bring together, because we've had this free immigration. The other element of this that I have to add to this, oh, they take our jobs, oh, they ruin our standard of living. Bunk. In that period from 1840 to around the First World War in 1914, it is estimated that 60 million people left Europe to find homes in other places. Out of that 60 million, it is estimated that over 35 million, over half of them, came to the United States. At a time when the United States was a lot smaller. In 1900, we barely had 100 million people. And the census of 1900 showed that 1/3 of all the people in the United States were either immigrants or the immediate children of immigrants. 1/3 of the population. All of these people came to America. They filled niches and jobs and offered hands that had not been available. Those decades of the mass immigration to the US in the second half of the 19th century, it was America's Industrial Revolution. And with capital investments and rising productivity and more hands to do work, our standards of living grew immensely with real incomes and real opportunities rising for all of us. And that has continued into the 20th century. Even with the immigration restrictions, every wave of immigrants have added something to America. Look at the waves of immigrants that have come just since the Second World War, okay? The Vietnamese, the Cambodians, for instance, the Taiwanese, the Koreans. Who are the kids that win the spelling bees? The kids of Chinese and Vietnamese immigrants. They're totally part of America. They act as examples to emulate. Study hard, get an education, improve, know the language, be able to have a good vocabulary. This is what has made America great. The thing that is least important of all of our characteristics and qualities as human beings is the color of this. Close your eyes and imagine that you're in a room of people, and all you can know about them is what you hear them say and what you learn about their deeds as human beings. Will it matter what they look like, what the color of their skin is like, who an ancestor was? If we all had our eyes closed, all we could go by is our judgments of what they are in terms of their qualities, characteristics, and character as human beings. It doesn't matter what you look like. It's who you are as a person. I mean, it's that thing that, Martin Luther King said, right? This famous line of his, to judge a person by the content of their character rather than the color of their skin. The only thing different in the waves of immigrants now compared to all those who are our ancestors is the language they may speak, the religion they may have grown up with, and a little bit of how they look. But they're no different. We will benefit from having open borders, rising economic opportunities, more people to give more hands to do more work, and to fill niches that other people don't want to necessarily do or have moved on to. So we should be hailing the spirit and the history of America as a land of immigrants, and a land that could be open to even more immigrants to make us even better than we have been.
Yeah, excellent points. And your point about the culture, that these immigrants are destroying America's culture. I hear that all the time. And my response is, what culture are you talking about? Are you talking about culture in New York City and Little Italy there, or Chinatown? Or are you talking about culture in Charleston, South Carolina, or the culture in the French Quarter in New Orleans, or the culture in my hometown of Laredo, Texas, which is about 96% Mexican American, and in which much of the population there speaks Spanish as a first language? Is that the culture you're trying to preserve? Or San Francisco or Phoenix? The fact is that there is no one culture in America. It's the diversity of culture that makes it one of the best countries you could ever have. And we ought to be relishing this. When I hear this notion that, immigrants, they're a burden, this is just such nonsense. it's extremely difficult to leave a country. I mean, even right now, when people move to another state, it's psychologically difficult for a lot of people. People are accustomed to where they live. They have family around. They have their customs, their language, their church groups. It's very difficult to move just from a city to a city, much less to a different country. Imagine picking up stakes and moving to Guatemala and having to learn the language there and get a job. It's a rare person that's willing to do that, to leave a country, leave his family. It's usually the person who's very industrious. And we're talking about people at the bottom echelons also. We're not just talking about the computer geniuses, the software geniuses. We're talking about people at the bottom of the economic ladder that are willing to give up everything, their language, their customs, their family. This is like a gift to a society because you're getting this influx of industrious people that traditionally have very strong moral values, family values. These are people that want to get ahead, they want to improve, so they bring a vitality to society. They're like an injection of energy into a society, of entrepreneurship and willing to work and can do. Americans ought to be saying thank you. Thank you for this free gift that you're giving us, instead of looking on them as a burden. And your point about taking away jobs is nonsense. I mean, for one thing, it shows the insecurity that the American people have become. Most Americans have at least a high school degree. Most now, I think, have college degrees, and they're scared of competition from people that have a elementary school or maybe a junior high education. Now, it's true that they may displace people at the bottom echelons, like in the farm workers, but those displaced workers quickly find jobs, higher paying jobs, more rewarding jobs from the activities that are being generated by this influx of immigrants. Like they need used cars, or the used car industry needs salesmen or people to handle the books, clothing stores, all kinds of things. That the demand then starts as the prosperity starts arising within the immigrant class. They start demanding consumer goods that are now demanding jobs, and that's where the displaced Americans go because they need people to speak English in those areas. They need people that have a work ethic, American style. So there's a ready opportunity for that. And it's not just America. You pointed out the tremendous increase in the standard of living because, in large part, because of this immigrant flow through the division of labor. You've got a lot of people doing a lot of things for people. There's another example. This is Argentina in the early part of the 20th century. They adopted a lot of the American principles, founding principles, the Constitution and so forth. And among them was low taxes and open immigration. So Europeans flooded into Argentina. Buenos Aires was the second largest city on the eastern seaboard, second only to New York. And it wasn't until Perón came in, which was their version of Franklin Roosevelt, and started imposing all these welfare state policies, that period of prosperity cratered and has never returned. So this is the type of thing that we ought to be relishing. Let me make another point here. They make a big thing out of the need to convert these immigrants that are here illegally into citizens. That's just nonsense. I mean, all these people want usually is they just want to improve their lives. They want to make money. They want to get rich. They want to provide a better life for their children. The citizenship aspect is secondary to them. That with open borders, people come over. There's no demand or urge or pressure for them to become citizens. You can keep your citizenship requirements as stringent as you want. You don't need to loosen them up in order to alleviate the problem. You just have people come over here, they retain their Mexican citizenship, their Guatemalan citizenship. If they want to apply for citizenship, they can, but they're not required to. And they work, they visit, they tour, they invest or whatever, and they just retain their citizenship. What's the problem? I mean, I have a friend who's Japanese. She's lived here for 30 years or so, maybe. She's retained her Japanese citizenship. She wants it that way. Who cares? I mean, I don't care. Why should we care that she's here working? She's got a job and so forth, teaching Japanese to the children of American parents. Why should we care what our citizenship is? Now, today, let me give you another example of this. There's more than 1 million Americans living in Mexico. And most of them have retired there. They're not assimilating. They hang out amongst themselves. They don't learn Spanish. They eat hamburgers instead of enchiladas. They send their money back to the United States. They cheer for American sports teams. They pay taxes to the United States. Who cares? Should they be forced or pressured into becoming Mexican citizens just because they're living in Mexico? Of course not. People should be free to live their lives the way they want, so long as they're not initiating force or fraud against others. That's what brings a peaceful, harmonious world. And that's why libertarianism is the key, not only to this immigration crisis and chaos, but really it's the key to all the other crises and chaos we're facing in this country.
I totally agree. What's important is if we ask what makes an American, and it's the American culture, it is not that everyone speaks the same language or shares the same religion or has the same historical family background. What makes America one is that it has historically stood for a set of universal principles of individual liberty, voluntary association, market opportunities, and an impartial rule of law. That is what makes America as a common country. If you share those ideas, then, and that applies to anyone in the world, then spiritually, you're in America, whether you live here or not.
Yeah, and you can see it domestically. I mean, if we live in a country that has open borders, we take it for granted, but it didn't have to be that way. I mean, you could have a system where each state government could erect walls and barriers and restrictions and have border guards and prosecute people for entering a state without permission. Instead, our ancestors said, we want a system of totally open borders domestically. So it's really the largest free trade, open immigration zone in history. And that was carried through with the system of open immigration that we had in this country for more than 100 years. That was our history. That was our legacy. And it's time to stop turning our backs on our heritage and our legacy and start embracing some of those sound founding principles. So why don't we wrap it up early, Richard? But let me just ask you, how are the classes going?
Classes are going very well. Teaching a course on market ethics in modern society. And we're discussing the principles of freedom, both universally and those that made America great, as a basis of dissecting the criticism made of the free society and the capitalist system.
Yeah, and are you doing that by Zoom again?
Yes, I'm doing my Zoom courses this semester.
How's that going?
Not as good as I would like it to be back in the classroom. Then I can look at the students and see if they're faking laughing at my lousy jokes. If they're trying to supposedly taking notes on their computer, but I can look behind them and see that they're really buying something off the home shopping network and so on. You can't easily do that when you're Zooming. But no, actually the classes are going very well, but I'll be glad to be back in the classroom at some point.
That's great. All right. Well, we're going to wrap things up then. Thank you for tuning in. Come and visit us at FFF.org. If you're not subscribing to our FFF Daily, be sure you do that. That's free. We've got our monthly journal, Future of Freedom. That costs not much. And we're having a big conference starting on March 3rd. Be sure to sign up for that. That's on our website. Free admission. It's called The National Security State and the Kennedy Assassination. Got a great lineup of speakers. You can see the conference website on our website at FFF.org. So with that, Richard, good to see you again, and look forward to exchanging ideas on liberty with you next week.
Until next week.